We have accessibility on social media, why you should be thinking about it, from Sam Alderson, social media strategist at Yoast. Sam, take it away.
Welcome. If you're interested in accessibility in social media, then you're in the right place. My name is Sam and I work for a little WordPress plugin called Yoast. You'll find me on most of the networks as Good Plan Sam, and I'm obsessed with social and accessibility. Let's take a look at today's topics that I'm going to cover. I can't stress enough that there is so much more to this than I can cover in today's talk. I just want to get the cogs turning and get you thinking about accessibility in social media. So why is this important? Well, people use social media daily, and for me, accessibility at its absolute core is about people. Online accessibility is finally starting to get a lot more attention, and that the people who use the internet are very different. They access content and services in different ways, and I hope that if you take one thing away from this, it's to remember to not make assumptions about those people that are coming to consume your content. I'm going to share with you how you can give your users, readers, customers a choice while designing for a diversity of experiences and providing different ways for people to participate and interact with your content. Opening up your content in this way means more users, more retweets, more followers, likes, link clicks. Just to give you an idea about how people interact with social media, here are some fun numbers, because we all love stats. Facebook reported in 2016, 85% of people watch videos without sound. They also found that 80% of people who watch videos with captions are more likely to watch the entire video. Similarly, YouTube found that videos with captions had 10% more view time. The point is not that captions are important, though don't get me wrong, they definitely are. It's that different people consume content in different ways and have different needs. When you tweet, share, or interact on social media, you cannot be sure that the person on the other side will fully understand what you've sent. And if that person can't see, read, or engage with that content, then you need to be doing something about it. So you may be thinking, yes, Sam, I know this already. Where do I start? Well, let's start with images. A lot of what we do on the social team at Yoast is visual and designed to convey a specific information. For example, we use images to tell a story, to convey a message, or to get people to take an action. There are numerous different people consuming our content in different ways who have different challenges. I have to say though, we have an outstanding design team at Yoast that keeps everyone in check when it comes to accessibility, so huge props to them. So what are some of the basics to take into consideration when it comes to images? There are specific challenges that come around with colour and contrast. For example, you shouldn't rely on colour alone to convey a message. If some of your audience was colourblind, then the key information in this chart may be lost or change meaning. This Instagram post relies on me being able to see red versus green and to understand that green is good and that red is bad, but that green is also half of this chart. This also relies on a cultural context of red being bad and green being good, which is not universal. So to make this post more accessible, we need to label the key information that we want to get across. That's better. See how we've added the percentages? They may be small, but it's something to keep in mind. But this is more about catering to those who are colourblind. The colours that we use and their relationships to each other is also something that you need to take into account. We can't assume that people see images the same way that a person with 20/20 vision sees them. But thinking about contrast can help. I've taken most of the colour out of this image to show you how some people may experience it. You can still identify the key parts, the message still makes sense, but it's not perfect. The contrast is not great near the bottom of the image. However, the key information is still readable and the text is still readable. This brings me on to text in images. It's something, again, that we do a lot at Yoast. Almost all of our posts have complex images with text on it. There are guidelines and tools that you can use to ensure that the contrast ratios of your text is sufficient against the background colour. Do note though that there are minimum contrast ratios based on the different sizes of the fonts that you use, so be aware. Other things to be mindful of is that the text in the image is inaccessible to screen readers. So it's best practice to include that text that's in the image in the caption of your post. Next, let's consider alt text. This is the text that is read aloud by assistive technologies. Images fall into three different categories when it comes to alt text, though on social media, for us at least, it's almost always informative. So first we have the informative images. These are the ones that convey meaning. Next you have functional images. Those have a specific role or purpose, for example, a logo. Then you have decorative ones, and these are just for show. W3C has a really handy decision tree that you can use to help you figure out which categories your images fall into. But for social media, it's almost always informative. So when it comes to alt text, what do you need to do? Well, there are a few best practices to keep in mind when writing them. Keeping it short is best, writing in proper sentences, and generally around 125 to 140 characters is the best way to go. It's effectively a short tweet. There are some platforms that provide you with a lot of room to write your alt text. Twitter, for example, lets you write 1,000 characters if you really want to. And with the surge of AI images, this amount of space can be super helpful. All social platforms have this function to add the alt text to your images, and I'll show you where you can find those. I'm going to share with you an example of an Instagram post from a while ago from our account. So here we go. Yoast SEO is now available on Shopify. It's basically the text in the image. While it's fine, it doesn't actually describe the image itself. There is important context here that we haven't communicated, so let's add some more. Here you can see we now have the text in the image and a brief description of the image itself. But we could go further. That's much better. Do you see how adding extra layers and context builds the picture? You could prove this even further, but this is much of an art as it is a science. So filling in something basic is better than not doing it at all. It gets you into the habit, at least, of filling in these fields. Remember that you have the context of your images and photos. Describe them as if you're talking to someone who has never seen them before. Utilize that. Here are some best practices to keep in mind when it comes to alt texts. So take screenshots. Okay, so now we know what you should be writing, but where do you add this? This can obviously be done directly in the platforms itself, and some scheduling services are now catching up and actually adding this functionality as well. I'm going to show you quickly how to add an alt text to your images. On Twitter, you compose your tweet like normal. You see that in the bottom right-hand corner, you have the alt text button. You can write your description in there, and then you can save it. This will then show that the image has an alt attribute. This has to be done before you tweet, so do remember that. You cannot edit this after the fact. One great thing that Twitter has introduced is that you can turn on a notification that will remind you to add an alt attribute before you actually tweet your tweet. So if you're tweeting out a photo, it will remind you to add that alt text. It's a big win. On Instagram, it's a bit hidden. It's in the advanced settings. So once you go there, you need to then fill it in and save it, but you can edit this after posting. On Facebook, there is an AI that can do this for you, but it can get it wrong. So it's better practice to actually write it yourself. AI alt attributes are rarely good. They may do a reasonable job of identifying what's in the picture, but they lack your context. Let's talk videos, especially short form video. They're only getting bigger. I could do a whole talk about that, but that's not for today. We're seeing that TikTok is heavily influencing our content consumption, and the other networks are working hard to catch up. Facebook recently added a version of its version of TikTok to the home feed. So video is here to stay from a social perspective. It's good to remember that YouTube is also a social network with a huge and diverse audience that have very high standards and very little patience. So the small details matter. There's a lot to consider when it comes to videos, but one of the easier things that you can do is to add captions or subtitles to your videos. But what's the difference? Captions convey all the essential audio, dialogue, music, sound effects. They're intended for audiences who cannot hear the audio. Subtitles, however, convey the dialogue only. They're intended for audiences that can hear but not understand the audio. On social media, these terms are used interchangeably, but outside of that, they're used for more specific reasons. There are also two types of captions that you can use. We have the closed captions, meaning that a user can turn them on and off, which gives them the choice. Or you have open captions, which are actually burnt into the video themselves. And sometimes this can cause problems with subtitles actually overlaying them. Every single platform has the ability for you to add closed captions to your videos, though sometimes they're not formatted the best. So let's do a bit of a quick rundown. It's also worth noting that subtitles makes translation and localization a lot easier. YouTube can do this automatically, however, you must review these. This is not 100% accurate. You need to pay attention to the wording and the timings. especially if the person talking has a thick accent. You could also upload an SRT file or paste in the script if there is one. This will give you a much more accurate result. Programs like Descript are a great help. Twitter can do it automatically, but it's hit and miss, so stick with uploading the captions to the Twitter Media Library. Instagram and TikTok also have options to do closed captions. They're pretty accurate, but you do need to edit them to make sure that everything makes sense. Instagram Stories, however, is not styled great, and they're not exposed to screen readers, so the text isn't available for everyone. With Facebook, again, you could trust the AI, but this can still be hit or miss. So review these once the video has been processed, or upload an SRT file or the script to ensure that you have them correct and concise. Okay, we're on the home straight. And these three can be the most annoying when it comes to social media accessibility. First, we have emojis. Emojis have a text description, like an alt attribute, meaning that this is actually read aloud by assistive programs. So this meme from a couple of years ago is a great example of how not to use emojis. I perceive this visually to be red flags. However, a user with a screen reader, this says, I am not on Twitter, triangular flag, triangular flag, triangular flag, triangular flag. You get my point. So if you're going to use emojis, make sure that you use them towards the end of your copy, or if it's between sentences, make sure that they have context. When it comes to hashtags, please use camel case. Basically capitalizing each word in the tag. It helps the word to breathe when read aloud by assistive technologies. It also means that screen readers will read it out as singular words as opposed to one contained word. Here's an example of a hashtag that has gone down in social media history and is still brought up as an example of what not to do. Also note that acronyms and initialisms like SEO, for example, should always be capitalized. Custom fonts. Oh, custom fonts. Custom fonts were very trendy back in the 90s and seem to have come back into trend every now and then. I don't know about you, but this really makes me shake my head when I see people do this, because it tells me that the person doing this really does not understand accessibility at all. Screen readers cannot process this as text. They'll often mistake this for math, or worse, they'll just ignore it, which means that you're neglecting a huge chunk of your audience. This also goes for ASCII art. While this is cute for me, this is very exclusionary. Please think about this before you do it. Think about the person who is consuming your content. I know that was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but this is something that we should all be thinking about in order to be inclusive. This is only the tip of the iceberg as well. Like I said at the beginning, there is a lot to this. But once you know, and you start spotting other people doing these mistakes. Here are just a few of the key takeaways from this talk, and I hope that you're enjoying the rest of the WordPress Accessibility Day. Thanks for listening.